We're going to move on to the podcast. Yay! Let me just go bring it up. My investing. I'm going to finish my coffee. Okay. One. Let's see. What was the last one we read? Or we listened to? So we're on podcast number 3. Did I write? I just said values, understanding your business, investing with your values. Okay, so I'm just going to say, I'm going to write the whole thing. It says finding a competitive advantage. Make sure you, because this is in a book, so it's going to be much harder to find these notes later, but just make sure you have everything ready. I'm going to get my headphones out so I can hear it nice and close. You guys will be able to hear it too, but I like it up in my ears. Up in my earphones. Boop. And I will make sure you guys can hear it too by opening up the desktop sound. Let's just make sure that it comes through. Good. Okay.
Mohnish Pabrai, David Einhorn, point of view of where we think the best investors in the world are, and that would be guys like.
Okay. I'm going to, like before, I like to speed it up so we go through it just a little bit faster because this is like a whole hour of listening, and I'm going to be taking time to. And I'm always just, truthfully, a big reason why I keep writing down these names is so I can remember them. A big problem I have is remembering names, remembering what they did, and stuff like that. So I want to remember these names, and I want to really get them stuck in here. And there's even big guys like see, I'm struggling to recall, but this is what you need to be able to recall it, so that way you have the information. I'm gonna look. It's cheating, but I need it. Warren Buffett and I can't remember his name. What's his name? Charlie Munger. I think it's because Charlie Munger's dead and I keep forgetting. Everyone still talks about Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Other people like Guy Spear and Mohnish Pabrai and Phill. Like I want to remember their names, what they've done, and be able to regurgitate it to people. You'll become a better investor when you can remember people, companies, where they're at, what they're doing. You need to get that information in there. It's going to take time. Don't think just because you read it once or you've heard it once that now it's in there. Get it in there, then try and regurgitate it. Get it in there, try and regurgitate it, Once, the thing is like, we're so used to memorization, especially in the US. Memorize, test. The thing is, you don't keep that information long term a lot of the times. Some of it you do, but a lot of it you don't. And so this is kind of re-educating yourself. People who've gone to college, maybe they do better at this. A lot of us didn't finish 4 6-year degrees, So even if you only have a year or 2, that's not enough under your belt, especially if you didn't go to like a collegiate, like high league, like college. You don't have the same training, the same understanding of research and like recallization of information that these people who've gone through 4, 6, 10 years of college that have had to learn how to do this. So these are things we're having to learn on our own, guys. And that's okay. You can do that at any time in your life. It doesn't have to be, right now, but like we gotta start somewhere. And this is the start. Let me get a nice big drink and we'll get going. Ready?
Like Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, Monesh Pabrai.
So just write those names down: Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, Monesh Pabrai. I'm just gonna write them down so I can you just saw me struggle here. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, Monesh Pabrai, and these are just, you can like make a note next to them, like some of the best investors.
David Einhorn.
David Einhorn. I didn't know this, but Einhorn is E-N.
Guys we call Rule 1 investors. So we're going to kind of dive into that.
Okay, and then say Rule 1 investors. Or value investors. Or you could say top investors, best investors, or quote unquote, most successful investors.
Okay. Because Warren Buffett said there's 2 rules of investing, and only 2 rules. And rule number 1 is don't lose money, and rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. Yeah. So all these guys come from this place of don't lose money. Well, how do you do that? So here's Charlie telling the BBC.
Well, and so we spent the last 2 podcasts talking about the first point out of this Charlie Munger interview, which we played last time as well.
Right.
So we just want to play it again so we remember, where we are and which point we're on, which will be number 2.
Exactly. 2 out of 4. And Charlie's first one, in case he goes by you quickly, is that you can't do 2, 3, 4 in the order of things you have to do. You can't do that without getting through number 1. Number 1 is the most important screen, which is
being capable of understanding the business.
Keyword
capable.
So here we go. Charlie Munger, 2012 to the BBC.
What they have to do to win. We have to deal in things that we're capable of understanding. And then, once we're over that filter, we have to have
Write that down.
a business with some intrinsic characteristics that give it a durable competitive advantage. And then, of course, we would vastly prefer a management in place with a lot of integrity and talent. And finally, no matter how wonderful it is, it's not worth an infinite price. So we have to have a price that makes sense and gives a margin of safety considering the natural vicissitudes of life. That's a very simple set of ideas. And the reason that our ideas have not spread faster is they're too simple. The professional classes can't
It's so true.
justify their existence if that's all they have to say. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also obvious and so simple. What would they have to do with the rest of the semester?
I love how joyful he is about that.
How can they keep talking?
He just has this sense of like, oh, those people.
I mean, there's a reason why Charlie is a little bit gloaty here. Because, for 40 or 50 years, the academic establishment has insisted that he and Warren are really sort of like monkeys flipping coins, and they've just gotten lucky in a random game.
Yeah.
And more it's becoming clear that the game is not random, that the stock market is not efficiently priced, that there's a lot of emotion around managing money, and that emotion can create prices that are not connected to values. And that's where these guys live and breathe. So
and
it's, he's watched it in his lifetime.
Actually, my partner just sent me a YouTube video where some people who are, I've been seeing a lot more on the internet, who are getting investing in politics and economy. One of them a younger guy, one of them an older man, and he was explaining to him, like, this is a scenario I'd like to teach people on how a stock looks, and it's a cup, and half of it's filled with beer and half of it's filled with foam, and he's like, the beer part is the intrinsic value of the company. It's how much they're spending, how much they have saved, their debt, how their management is, what their moat is, like all this very tangible, like notable things that you can write down and you can calculate and you can see. It's like all this foam is all what people feel, like what people think are going to, like, we see that in how Trump is messing with the economy now, where he goes on these things and he's like, oh, we're gonna bomb you, or we're gonna do this and that, and everyone takes their money out, and you see it drop, you see the price drop, and then the day before he'll come back on and be like, oh, we're giving up, oh, everything's gonna be better now, and it goes back up. Somebody buys in at that low price, billions worth of money, and then that shoots up and they sell at the top, so they make a bunch of money. Now, we don't know who those people are. We can only assume that they're his friends, colleagues, other rich, famous people that are in on it, right? We disagree as a community ethically that is not okay. But this is how it runs, and it's always been run like this. And we're seeing it being abused right now, but this is how it works. We're even seeing new apps come out where they're like, oh, do you want to invest and trade, which is not, you're gambling because there's no way to know, on current events, an app where you can just say like, oh yeah, I think we're gonna bomb that, I think this many people are gonna die, I think that's trash. That is you are trash if you're putting your money in. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a mom with 10 kids who's working her ass off every day. If you are gambling in that form, you're trash in my eyes. I don't care how you feel about that, because you're the problem. You're being like, oh, these large companies, but then you're doing the same thing. You're behaving the same way, even worse, because because you know, and you're still doing it, and that's your choice. I just think you're trash. Okay, just so you know how I think of you.
Full circle now, where top level academics are now proving that Charlie and Warren have been right all along.
So they're making plays based on other people's emotions.
Absolutely. I mean, I've listened to Charlie a lot in my life, and his strong point, he says, is that they're not only rational investors, they're very rational investors, but they also really know where their boundaries are, where the limits are of their ability, their capability of understanding. That's what he was talking about there. What are the limits of that? And he said, Warren and I stay well away from that edge. And that's huge. Like, what are you capable of understanding? Like, we think of it as like digging a canyon, so like you're digging, we want to be an inch wide and a mile deep in whatever it is we're getting into here.
Wait, what is the canyon? The canyon is your area of expertise?
Yeah, your area of expertise. You don't even have to say expertise. It's kind of where you're competent. I mean, you could be running a McDonald's franchise and you don't have to be the world's most expert restaurateur, right? I mean, it's just all you have to do is be competent at doing this, and you can do very well running a reasonably, easy to understand business.
And honestly,
so you don't have to be a rocket scientist here. You just got to stay with the stuff you do understand.
So why is it a canyon?
I just think of it as that, in my own way of thinking about investing, is like I want to think of, I've got walls here.
Deep instead of wide.
Deep instead of wide, and I want, in my mind, the image is walls. Don't touch the walls.
Oh.
Right? Don't touch the walls, because now you're no longer on solid ground. Now you're at the edge of what you understand, and that's where the danger is. That's also where the opportunity is. And so because that's where you widen your knowledge, and over a 30-40 year investing lifetime, you can become a pretty wide canyon. You don't have to stay stuck in where you start. You find things that are sort of on the edge. So let's say you're a teacher and you really get education. That's your whole thing. You love it. You're passionate about it. You do it. You make money.
To start here, because we were just in the book. She just went over how there's this particular firm for teachers investing, and that it holds we could probably look at, it's probably more now, but $110 billion from all the teachers' 401k. Imagine if all the teachers pulled their money out of that fund, of that 401k, and put it back in to the companies that they really believe in, that they truly, take it away from the companies that they don't like, that they don't think are helping, that they think are causing. And teachers are probably some of the most knowledgeable to know what's negatively affecting the children these days, negatively affecting the growth of humanities, because they see it firsthand. So what a great random thing to just happen to line up with us today.
In it. And so you start investigating companies that are in education. You're looking at public companies like ITT Educational, that does vocational schools, University of Phoenix Online, which is Apollo.
Well, you mentioned that example last time, and my question was, how on earth could a teacher really know anything about those companies when running an educational company is completely different than teaching a classroom full of children? But I can see that maybe that's at least an area that that somebody who's a teacher certainly knows more about than I do, not being a teacher.
It's not so much knowing about it, it's about kind of grokking it.
Grokking it?
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh my gosh, that's a 1960s term, isn't it? Sorry. Oh my gosh, that comes from, I think, Ice 9.
What is Ice 9? Who are you? What is happening?
There's a guy named Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh.
Who wrote all these great books with a really, cynical view of the world. And he uses this term grok. He just came up with GROK, which means I get it.
Hold on. Is a phenomenon in artificial intelligence where a neural network, after long periods of seemingly standing training, suddenly experiences a rapid leap in performance, shifting from mere memorization of data to leap functioning and understanding. So it's a real term. He's talking about something else here, but it's a real term.
On some deep fundamental level.
I have never heard
You've
that
never heard
as a
anybody say
term.
that?
No.
Oh yeah, grok rocks, man. Grok is a 60s, 70s term. Yeah, it's like I totally get you, man. I dig you. I understand. I get it on a deep level. I might not be able to explain
I see
it.
the connection.
Like I'm a teacher and I can't explain why ITT Educational might be a better company than K-12 because I've got to learn that yet. But I get the educational world because I'm in it. I'm playing in it. That's the ocean I swim in.
You know those people. You know what they're about.
Yeah.
At least you hope you do.
You,
can
or at least
see
you,
daily
it's
what
just that
they're
you feel
doing,
comfortable
what's
there.
happening.
Yeah, that's my world. I have to feel comfortable around this because these guys are teachers and all that. So what I need to learn is about the business, but I'm already swimming in that water, right? We've kind of talked about that before.
Yeah, that's what we talked about the last 2 times, really, is how to graduate from the field of your current understanding based on your job or your people that you know into this sort of what I think of as like another world of big business that's traded on the stock market.
Right.
Yeah, and which can feel intimidating, but when you break it down, it's like trying to climb a mountain. If you try to think about being at the top, it's a huge task. But if you think about just taking one step in front of the other, you can break that down into manageable chunks, and that's what we want to do when we're, in my words, building, digging this canyon.
Well, I didn't know that you weren't supposed to touch the walls of the canyon. I just thought of it as a canyon, and maybe the walls are actually helpful to you, but
like a
they're not.
tiny
So
Stay
it's
away
almost
from
more
the
like,
walls of the
is it
canyon.
Is it like you're
You don't
standing on
wanna
a very
bump into
tall, narrow cliff, and you're not supposed to fall off the cliff?
You've just completely inverted my
I
metaphor. It's
apologize.
completely upside.
It's completely
You filled in the
different
canyon and taken away the
I
walls.
did.
But I get it. That'll work.
Okay.
Just don't get too near the edge. I actually like yours better
Well, I like the canyon thing because it, to me, implies depth of knowledge.
Right.
because it's hard to dig a plateau.
You tend to just come upon those.
You come upon plateaus.
Right.
You can narrow them, but it's very hard to widen them. So that's why the canyon. But your metaphor is actually better for that moment of getting near the edge where you don't want to be near the edge of this thing. So the key is knowing where the edge is. So we really start with small steps, just baby steps, and just realize that this process is going to be fun and it's going to be a lifetime. It never ends.
Those 2 things are so interesting that you say that because it does not feel fun to me
Never ends.
or to most people,
Yeah.
and it feels like something that you have to do very quickly or else you're going to run out of money. in retirement.
That's why it doesn't feel like fun, is because you feel like you have to do it really quickly.
Yeah,
And
there's a
it's
lot of
a
pressure.
huge,
You don't wanna
enormous
blow it.
thing to
Get
climb this mountain. You have to do it quickly.
That's right.
Don't
Quickly
get
and
something.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Because you
This
can't lose
isn't
money. Rule number 1.
versus
Right,
stuff.
but what if it was like, okay, you really got lots of time. That really climbing
Yeah,
this
you
mountain
have your whole life.
is not about, well, there's going to be some of you that have a time issue, right? Because you didn't get started on this early enough.
Right.
And we'll talk about that as we go. That can be a subject, really good subject for some future
But then a lot of people have
podcasts.
401k
But for right now,
or
let's just make the
something.
basic
You have
assumption that we
something
do have
going
time.
on.
If you've got 15 years, 20 years, you've got time.
You got time.
You can do nothing
I
for the
have
next
like
2 or 3
over
years at
30,
all
so-
and still compound money in the 20-30% range
Just
if you follow along what these guys
Read.
are teaching us here. So it's the
You're in your
critical thing is
30s
you've
or
got this
younger.
huge filter, this huge screen that you have
Lots
to go
of time,
through.
lots
And
of
it is,
time.
are you
Don't waste
capable
it.
of understanding
Yeah.
this industry
Yeah.
right here?
Yeah. And so the second one that Charlie said is it a business with some intrinsic characteristics that give it a durable competitive advantage?
intrinsic
Yes.
characteristics.
That's so
the second.
vague.
It's beautiful.
So intrinsic characteristics. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they better be there.
And I think it's interesting that she's saying like that she feels like it's fake because I don't feel like it's fake. When I heard that the first time, I was like, that makes sense. Because when I looked at a company, I'm like, how do you know which company is a good company? I can see which ones people are liking, I can see which ones are growing, but like she said in the book, there's been companies that were way up here that were ripping people off and fucking crash shortly after. So it's like just because they're way up here, like Nvidia jumped up, like Facebook jumped up, like all these companies that have like top 5, top 8 like companies. I'm like, how do you know for sure that those are the good companies? It's because some of them have intrinsic characteristics. They have moats. They have things that other companies just without extensive amount of money and time could never pull off. Apple, they created theirs because for a long time, like they were the brand. They made themselves be the cool brand. They had the next cool thing. They had the next awesome camera. They had the next sleek look. They were on top. Now, not so much. But they do have a huge mode of like removing now. Now if you have an Apple Watch, an Apple phone, a MacBook, they all work together. They function together. You're not going to just switch to Google. You're not going to get a Google Watch. You're going to continue getting the Apple stuff. If your family grew up in Apple, like that's what you're used to. You're used to using those platforms. Switching into Android, like the two systems, I hate looking at Apple phones. I'm an Android user, so like when someone hands me their Apple phone, they're like, I'm like, I feel like an old granny right now. I'm like, what do I touch? Like, so like there's this moat of having to learn or unlearn how to use a product that they have, and that's something that like other companies just do not have. Even Android systems, like it's just not the same. So the moment I heard that, I was like, that makes fucking sense to me. So it's crazy that, you know, on her side, as a woman too, right? Like, she's like, oh, that makes even less sense to me. What's an intrinsic value? What's that? So like, yeah, take your time. If you're feeling like that, you're like, what is an intrinsic? Really dig into that. Then really read books about it. Read the definition. Like, Google shit. Watch YouTubers. Do what you need to do to be able to get to the point where you understand what an intrinsic value is.
And it has to have a competitive advantage.
So
That's
maybe
terrible.
maybe the professor should get onto this, because that might take a couple of classes to work through. What exactly is an intrinsic characteristic of a business? What does that mean? Like, sometimes you hear Charlie talk about it in terms of a franchise. You know, it's got a, but I don't know that explains it any further either. So shall we chew on this one a little bit?
Yes.
Please.
Okay.
I hope that you know what the intrinsic characteristics are.
Well, I'm going to walk into it a little bit backwards. So I want to start with this idea of a durable competitive advantage. Durable, obviously, is something that's going to last for a long time. And a competitive advantage means that you have an edge in the marketplace. So if you
Write that down. If you have not already, I have it down, but I want you to make a nice, good, because they're going to chat about this. A durable, competitive advantage. And then take whatever notes you need from this.
you think about starting a little business up, most people, when they're thinking about it clearly, want to have what we call a niche business.
A niche.
You want to be the only
A
person in it,
niche.
right? You
It
just
says
you don't.
niche, but it's a niche business. So that would think about like, I've been seeing the gum industry changing, right? Like, gum's always just kind of been gum. It's like something you chew, something delicious, typically for kids. If it's for adults, it's minty. Mentos was kind of niche for a while because it was like a candy, but then there was like a candy gum. Very interesting, right? And then we saw the gum do like, the popping stuff in it where like, as you're chewing, pops of mint come through, right? And then now the real niche like gum is the gum that heals your teeth, the gum that's like toothpaste, the gum that restores enamel. It doesn't really work. I haven't looked into it. I don't really know. But that's a niche company. A niche company is, I'm sure he'll talk more about it, would be like before organic and natural and pesticide free like foods came out, right? That was a niche company because it was just boxed food, produce food. Like, we didn't care. But then all of a sudden, organic started being written on things. Pesticide free started being written on things, Those became a niche company. Eventually, it kind of fades. And so even a more niche company is one where other people can't just pick it up and add it into theirs. But nonetheless, what is that niche? The same thing, like podcasts, right? There's so many different types of podcasts, but what kind of podcast are you doing? Investing. I'm doing investing stuff, but mine's for emotional people, women, people who are scared, fearful, people who are uneducated, who don't feel like they can be educated, who don't know how to start the research, people that are uncertain. That's my niche. Which is crazy because it's the majority of the population. So that's the niche here for me.
Don't want somebody else already in there, because then you have to take some of their customers, or you're up against their advertising or whatever. So the idea for starting small businesses is you want to get a niche, some kind of a little niche business. Maybe you're the only Mexican restaurant in a pile of restaurants.
And that's the thing, like, for him, he was a part of the niche because he is the Rule 1 investors that he found are people who aren't trying to educate other people. They did some things, they're trying to show people, but it wasn't, they didn't really write books for it or have podcasts or he literally has like a monthly seminar, 3-day seminar that you can pay to go to. And then from those seminars, he picks 20 people who he personally trains and invests with. So he's an educator. He is a teacher of this. That is his niche. It's not that just he's a Rule 1 value investor like the other people. He is an educator, a trainer of Rule 1 value investing people of the 21st century. That is his niche. My niche is finding people who are fearful of getting into any form, are uneducated, unknowing, are emotional around that kind of stuff. So you gotta... find that particularity.
Restaurants in a corner, or maybe your home cleaning business is just for high-end homes, and you've got this great staff that wears
That's a good
uniforms.
one.
You know, something that gives you an edge.
Something that makes you different from
Yeah.
the other companies
Yeah.
around you.
Right.
And that's something
different.
is you want it to be an intrinsic characteristic of the business. You want it to be the way the business functions is that thing. Like you don't have to tack it on and try to make it work. It's because
Right.
that's what your business is.
That is
Your
what it
business
is, yeah.
is doing home cleaning for high-end homes, and you have a staff of really smart people who get along with wealthy people really well, and you build this.
And I think that's true. I feel like I'm coming up in the new wave. Like some of the people I'm following and listening to are Daniel Town, Phill Town, Brandon from New Money. I just started paying attention to 2 other people, but I'm still kind of learning about them and remembering their names, so I'm not going to bring them up because I don't want you guys to go look into them and then be people that are not. But I trust those people. Those people, I'm like, that's what I want to help people understand that they can move into. I want to show people that there's a safe way to invest and that there's a mindset around it, a daily active lifestyle, a Leah's lifestyle to how you do things. It's not just, oh, I wake up and I go to work. It's, oh, I wake up. The coffee that I got today was locally grown. You know, I buy Mexican coffee, instant coffee, so I'm not going to say too much because, again, like I said, where I'm at right now, I was in that place. I lost a lot of money, support and stuff, and so I've come back down. I'm settling into something, and I'm moving back in. Just like the stock market, sometimes we do that. There's a ride to things. It's okay that, you start eating vegan, and then you realize, oh, crap, I did this. I'm not eating properly. I'm so tired I can't keep moving. I'm so exhausted I can't keep doing this. I don't have the protein I need. So I start going back to what I was doing before, right? Because that's what's comfortable to me. I start re-educating myself. I start learning some more. I start trying. And then I go back. I'm like, okay, so these are the vitamins I need. This is the stuff I need. This is how I need to be eating and working out. And maybe I don't need to be vegan, but I'm going to cut out some of the more dense, red meats. I'm only going to be eating chicken and fish. I'm only going to be eating some turkey. You know what I mean? It's, for me, that's the niche of life that I'm working on sharing and teaching and educating and being a part of. And these are the people that I'm using to help teach me and educate and show me a way, a part of it, and I'm applying that to the rest of my life and hopefully encouraging other people to do a similar thing.
Really durable competitive advantage. And that one that I'm describing right now would be called a brand.
A brand.
If you remove
That's
that
good.
intrinsic characteristic
It
or
would know.
characteristics, does the business die?
Let's talk about it in terms of the brand characteristic. Okay, so when you build a brand, you're basically saying that what you got last time is what you're going to get this time. And what you got last time is so good and so wonderful that you're not thinking of my business as a generic thing. You're thinking of it as a specific. So, for example, Coca-Cola is the classic brand, right? Because we don't think about going and getting a cola. Coke has our brain cooked to where we think of getting a Coke. Or
In the South, people say, I'm going to go get a Coke when they mean any kind of soda.
that's a brand. Exactly right. And in the South, you don't even think about going to get a Pepsi, especially in Atlanta.
Oh, sure.
Right? So these guys get mind share, and it becomes an intrinsic characteristic of the business. It's something that's fundamental to the whole business, and they protect it life and death, right? So when New Coke came out back in the 90s, it was a comic tragedy. I mean, they didn't have to do it. They just had some guy running the company that thought, wow, what a great idea. We've tested this, and people want New Coke. And it turned out that they were
People did not
just
want
blowing holes in their own 100-year-old brand, which is a bad idea.
People did
So
not want
an
it.
intrinsic
It was
characteristic,
not
we think that there's actually just 5 of them. Do you want to
New
get into them?
Coke.
Yeah.
A little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, because we'll narrow it down a lot if we can really package the world up mostly. By the way, this will follow the 80-20 rule. 80% of the companies that we're talking about will have one of these 5 characteristics. There's always the 20% that's a little bit different, but those are harder, and we don't do harder.
We don't do
Do you have a list of characteristics?
I do.
That sounds really helpful. From my, I have no idea what he's talking about.
And not surprisingly, I didn't make these up. These are pretty much from Warren and Charlie. When you dig in deep enough, this is what you'll find that they're looking for.
All right, so the 5 classically intrinsic characteristics.
Yes. Brand, secrets, switching,
Hold on.
toll.
Brand. Secrets. Toll bridge.
Bridge, and price.
Oh, these sound like
Price. I only got 4. Hold on. Let's go back just a little.
intrinsic characteristics.
Yes. Brand, secrets, switching,
Switching. That was the one. Switching. Which I talked a little bit about. How hard is it to switch?
toll bridge, and price.
Oh, these sound like competitive advantages rather than intrinsic characteristics.
Oh, these are intrinsic characteristics.
They're both.
They're both. Yeah, well, the intrinsic characteristic creates the durable competitive advantage.
Got it.
That's the whole point. So brand is the toughest one to build. This takes a long time. Okay, so but you can see it the easiest. So
take a long
Harley
time.
Davidson has a brand, Ford has a brand, and
kinda
so on.
gotta figure out the
And these
Ford.
brands are defended with advertising and a ton of money. And what you really do with Coca-Cola is you build this huge brand, and what it gets you is shelf space in a grocery store. And your distributors hold on to that shelf space like it's life or death battle against Pepsi. And
Right.
against anybody else that's trying to sneak in there, right?
Right.
So that's the war
Yeah,
that goes
not
on out
buying.
there in brand management.
You
And those are
see
tough.
that.
I mean, when you know you got one because you just name the thing and people think of it as that thing rather than the industry generic, you know. So let's go on to a couple of the others and you'll start
Like
to
if
see
you
this
think,
unfold.
like
a
you
little.
say candy bar, people can think like, Hershey, Snickers, Kit Kat, right? But no one's really thinking like Nestle. You don't think Nestle. But that is the company that's doing all of that, right? Some people might think candy bar Hershey, but I don't know if like the general world thinks that. But I know some people do. I know if you think candy bars, people have one image, and there's a percentage of people, the majority of them, that will think Hershey because it's probably the biggest one. I don't like them, so I think it's waxy. And actually, I see that now, like people like bending the chocolate bar. I mean, Hershey specifically made their chocolate so that it can't melt easily. You know, that was a big turning point for Hershey actually in a long time, because holding on to chocolate at one point was expensive, and letting it go bad meant that people weren't buying it. So they need to be able to buy it and hold it on hand for a while. And that's one thing that they did. They were like, look, you can hold it in your hand and it won't melt. Like, it lasts a long time. It's a whole thing for them for a while.
A little bit
I
of
know
that.
we need
Secrets are
people to
classic.
remember that.
Protection. A secret is something that Pfizer or Merck
protection.
would get when they develop a drug, and they get a patent on it. So
Yeah.
patents defend secret.
A good patent
and-
idea recently, actually, patents are good and also not good in my opinion. For example, Ozempic, I don't really agree with doing that kind of stuff, but it is very large right now, and the patent on it is actually about to come up. And right now, the patent for Ozempic is allowing these companies to outrageously price their product, and so it's super expensive, and so it's like only a portion of the population is able to afford to get their hands on it. But once the patent comes up, I know I was just watching someone talk about how there's companies in India that are prepared and are getting ready to produce the product at a much lower price. So it's going to drop the sales, it's going to make it much more accessible for the rest of the world. And I think for medicine and things like that, that is something that should be available. If it's seen as safe and you can use it appropriately, like, it should be affordable for everyone to use. But when a patent is held, it does allow the company to sell it at a much higher price, which, you know, brings in more moolah, which allows them to do more stuff with it, which can bring up the stock price, which if you buy in right away means that you get to go up with that.
It becomes an intrinsic characteristic of the business. How do you protect yourself? We're a company that goes out and gets patents. That's our.
Actually, a big company that's managed to use patents to their benefit is Disney. Disney is a large company for a really long time that's held on to their movie patents. I think the way they did that way back then is they would re-release. That's what the Disney Vault is. They would for a couple years put out a movie, for 5-10 years put it in the vault, re-release it. It's patented still, so you know they're the only ones that get to hold on like that. That's why we didn't see like a lot of remakes of Cinderella and The Little Mermaid up until like the 90s, early 2000s. So because they held the patents on them for so long, they were able to. They used the vault to their advantage to keep these patents going. I would have to look into that to make sure that that's exactly how they did it, but it's generally, from what I can recall, how it worked for them. I think with streaming like services and stuff, it's very different now, but that's how they used to do it.
Our, what Buffett would call our moat. So this whole idea comes down to understanding this metaphor of water around the castle that protects it from being attacked. Like,
Yeah.
just get this in your picture in your head.
You really
In
have to figure out
Japan,
the moats.
there are castles which have never been attacked because they built these giant moats around them,
Really
and it's simply
big.
impossible. The only way that castle falls is from internal strife, or somebody gets in there. You can't take an army.
Actually, I learned about it. There was one where the only reason it got like attacked was because they had a ball or like, you know, some kind of big party, and somebody snuck in, you know, one of their people that, when it was against whoever was the king at the time, snuck in and lit the place on fire. And so they after that they started building the castles out of bricks and stuff, because they didn't like that. Of course not, they had to rebuild it. I think it was the Osaka castle, actually.
Across the moat. So what this moat thing means in terms of business is that you really don't bother to attack me, because I'll simply destroy your army. The cost of even trying to cross the moat is so stupidly high that you'll never get there. And one of the things these guys say is, imagine you had the entire market cap of the company, like what it's worth in the market today. Could you take that amount of money and successfully compete? And think about a company like Coca-Cola. And the answer would be good luck. Because Pepsi has that amount of money.
So you're saying, could you take that amount of money, start a new company,
and
compete
with
with that
it.
other company?
Right.
Yeah.
And
you look at what Buffett buys. He buys these big moat companies that have this intrinsic characteristic. So here's a classic one: is Burlington
Like
Northern
Coke.
Santa Fe,
He's
which is a
always been a
railroad
big
that runs
Coke.
from Wyoming to Atlanta and from Long Beach,
Yeah,
California, to
that's
Chicago.
Yeah.
They only compete against one or two other railroads in both of those markets.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to get coal out of Wyoming and get it to Atlanta, they'll ship it for you for $40 a ton. I mean, I can't get a safe from Dick's Sporting Goods to my house 4 miles away for $40, okay?
That sounds like it's not a secret moat.
No, that's
Sorry,
not a secret moat.
We're talking about these as moats.
That's true. So this is just in general kind of a moat that this company has.
So you're using moat as another word for competitive advantage.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
You know, castle, moat,
And there are these
etc.
intrinsic characteristics, 5 of them,
Competitive
which
advantage.
provide you with this durability if you've got it. So Burlington Northern is a classic example of a toll bridge moat, which we'll come back to. But think about it just for a second. How would you compete? If you had all of the money that it would cost to buy Burlington Northern right now, how would you compete with them? Because you can't get a right-of-way to put in a railroad.
Right. You can.
You could have all the money on the moon, and that there is, and you probably couldn't get the
Trying to
right-of-ways.
because the thing is you have to buy the land, then you have to, you know, make sure it's okay to dig up the land and lay down, you know, like all the work down for it, and that's a lot of, first off, a lot of time, a lot of money, but like, no, right now people don't want that. Destroy waterways, destroy land. Like, we're trying to preserve land at this point. Even with like right now, one of the biggest things is data centers and the water resources that they're using for data centers and AI centers. Like, people are really fighting against that. Water protectors are really trying to do that for pipelines that they were putting down for the oil stuff, right? Like, we watched them destroy multiple salmon runs over the last 5 years because they kept trying to do it anyways, against what people wanted, against treaties, against the law. So, I mean, you can try, but guess what? The pipes weren't fully done. They destroyed all the stuff, and then nothing was put in, so all that money was wasted for that company, you know?
To put in this railroad, the regulatory authorities aren't going to give them to you. And so that's a giant, durable competitive advantage that comes from the intrinsic characteristic of that business. You got to build a railroad, and you can't. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what an intrinsic
And they're not
characteristic
going to
looks
share
like.
their...
Okay, so some of them are a little easier to see than others. Secret
So
moats.
we've got brand, secret, go ahead.
Secret moats. This is very much like a kind of a 3M. We figured out how to make sticky stuff that doesn't stick too hard, and you can now put it on Post-it notes. You can do vet wrap. You know, it's just all these cool things that come out of that, and they may not even patent it because they don't want you to know how they happened on that exact formula.
It's true. It's a constant question with new companies, especially now in the software field. Is it worthwhile to patent something? And do you want to? Because it might be easier to keep it as a trade secret and protect it that way.
But
Nobody else has to know about it.
Well,
that
what
way.
do you recommend when guys are coming in the door?
It completely depends on the company.
So it's all over the place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do is build a more durable business.
absolutely.
Right.
So you're putting up legal walls.
Sometimes.
Yeah, which can be about a secrets moat, it can be about a switching moat, it can be about a toll bridge. So
Legal walls are very important. I mean, the U.S. has a good amount of legal history of protecting businesses, protecting trade secrets. You look at companies in a place like China, where intellectual property is not particularly protected by their legal system.
Right.
And you know, a lot of companies won't even do business with Chinese companies because they're worried about their trade secrets or their copyrights or their trademarks being misused.
well, can we put that on our list of things to talk about? I'm writing this down right now.
It's not even just that, like, for example, when, like, I know I worked with Amway for a long time, which is an MLM, and they got over into the Chinese industry, and a big thing is they just don't do business the same way we do. So, like, if you want to put your company over there and to sell things in there, like, you have to have a brick and mortar in that place. You have to be able to produce the product there in the country. So you know, if you have a product where you strongly rely on the product to be made in a certain area, you might just be like there's some countries where they're like, no, you have to be able to make it here. You have to be able to use art. So it's not even going to be the same product, you know?
Chinese companies.
Yeah.
Because there is a whole thing about investing in Chinese companies. And
I'm
you're,
sure
you're,
there is.
You're right on top of a big part of that issue is the rule of law. But in the U.S., my gosh, I mean, lawyers like you
Chinese
who do emerging corporations are so critical. I mean, if we want to put money into a company, we have to make sure that the legal walls are up to protect this switching moat or this brand that they've got or this toll bridge moat that they've got. We want to protect it. I mean, if we own the railroad, we want our lawyers down there making sure the regulators don't change their mind about sticking in another railroad.
Sure, and I think that brings us back to our values discussion of last time because, I know nothing about the railroad situation. Maybe there's some public policy reason that we would want to have railroads be more open to new companies, and they're not right now, from what you're saying.
No, very difficult.
You would want to either invest in a company that either supports or does not support that kind of expansion based on your values, right?
Right, which, by the way, takes us also back to the idea of being an inch wide and a mile deep. Because you want to kind of know if there's going to be a regulatory change that would affect your moat.
Right.
It'd be pretty dramatic.
Absolutely.
And you can see
it sounds like it can remove it entirely if you have that kind of moat.
it could remove it entirely. And so the good news about this is this sort of moat destruction through regulatory changes is like watching a slow-moving iceberg. I mean, it takes years. You would have to literally have gone to some island somewhere for 4 or 5 years and not even paid attention to anything you own, not to see that this was coming at you in time to get out of this business and move on to some other business. So there is some maintenance to do. Which, can we put that on our list? Maintenance. You know, the more we discuss this, the longer our list gets, and I'm keeping thinking.
Well, that's a good thing. There's a lot to say about this.
Which means I think Charlie's gloating about how you can rip this out in 1 minute of your first class of your first semester might be a little bit of hyperbole.
It's just too simple for everybody.
It's just.
And then that's the thing. Like I think the reason why Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett would say things as simple, like it's simple, is because the idea, it's simplistic in the idea of it, right? You want to look for companies that are doing well, that are protected, get it at a good price, that are going to continue doing well, and that follow your values. In the sense that it's super, super simple. That is all you got to teach. The problem comes is when you start putting that into action, because it's a bit of work to find all of that information on one company, and there's over 500 companies in the S&P 500, right? There's over thousands of companies in our economy, so it's just, if you're one person, that's a lot of research to do, especially when you're trying to make a living, especially when you're trying to do daily life, especially when you have kids, especially when you have family, especially when you have hobbies. You're adding it into an already busy situation, for one person.
It's entirely simple. Yeah, simple is. But let's come back to these 5.
Yeah, okay, so we've done brand and secret.
Yep.
What's number 3?
Switching, incredibly powerful moat.
Switching.
Right,
So that's we kind of just talked about that.
We talked about that with Apple.
No, railroads are not so much switching.
Apple's not.
Railroads are more like a toll bridge. We'll come to that too. But switching
Railroads
is
are toll
more
bridges.
about,
Apple.
let's see, you've got a dentist, and they have x-rayed you, and they know everything going on in there, and they're competent.
This is different now because you can get your information from one doctor to another doctor pretty easily. My chart is pretty much used against all large dentists, doctors, eye doctors. It's pretty easy to get your information all put to one now. But 10 years ago, it was a bit harder. So switching can change. Like he said, sometimes you'd have to disappear for 5 years to know you need to get out of it, right? This, I think, would have been one of them.
Dentist, and certainly there's better dentists out there, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was thinking it's difficult to switch from one railroad to another, but you're saying there's actually more to it. And really, the switching one is just kind of a pain.
Pain.
It's possible.
Sure.
But it's kind of a pain.
Kind of a pain. And the moat size, the body of water that you got to cross, is about how much pain the switch would take. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's some classic companies that have recognized that the amount of pain it would take to get them out of your company and put in somebody else in their place is far too much to even consider. IBM is one of those. Microsoft is one of those. Oracle is one of those.
How are they a pain to switch from?
Oh my gosh, these
are you
guys.
Talking about business to business, kind of?
Yeah, because they're in your back room.
That's another thing you got to remember. It's not just everyday use for a single person. It's company switching. Companies put in all this information, all this data, all this back end things that you use, like your emails and stuff like that.
All this stuff is very specific. This is especially true before the cloud came along. They've got all this hardware in there. that's running all of this very specific software that was written very specifically for your business. And it was so bad. Once I gave a speech. I was working with Steve Jobs' company Next I was funding a vendor, or rather a third-party software company. And Steve's company asked me to go out to New York to the World Trade Center and give a speech about the new server kind of structure that IT was going to be using these Next computers. And I had 150 guys in the audience who were all the IT people from American Express companies. And they were locked into IBM mainframes, and they couldn't even think about it. They couldn't think about moving to a much more dynamic, much less expensive, much more powerful client-server model because they were locked into mainframe model.
Yeah, that Next computer was so interesting because from everything I've read about it, it was a much better system. And they just couldn't get the market share. They couldn't get people to adopt it.
Right, because Microsoft came in while Steve Jobs was making this beautiful square box and having everybody remake all of the boards and everything had to fit into the square box just because he wanted a square box. Meanwhile, Bill Gates went up there and went, hey, hurry up and get any old piece of thing out of there and let's get Windows NT into everybody's client-server model, right? And Sun was out there cranking away and they were getting the client-server model and they ran right by Steve. He was cutting edge and it was too slow to the market.
Well, then everything I just said is wrong because they would switch if they switched to Microsoft and Sun.
Eventually they did. So first off, you've got the smaller, quicker competitors who start to make the switch, or they're brand new, they're starting up an office and they get the newest, coolest stuff.
Right.
And gradually they forced IBM to come around. And that's actually what's happening right now in the cloud. IBM is being forced to turn this big aircraft carrier off of a client server model, which they've now just sold to Lenovo over in China. They say, here, take it. We're moving to a different model entirely. So Jenny Rometty at IBM is trying to make that turn. And they're going to make it. It's going to be awesome. But they were last. They were forced to do it by Oracle, Sun Oracle, which Oracle owns now, by Amazon putting out this monster, cloud system that is very inexpensive to use, and guys like
Google Drive.
Oh my God, Google Drive, Salesforce.com comes in with software as a service, and this whole model has changed now. So if you're, let's say, investing in a company that has this huge switching mode like IBM, you're protected, even though they're so slow to turn this ship. That's like you got everybody saying, they'll never make it, it's not going to happen. But IBM's been through that about 4 or 5 times in its history, and it always makes the turn because it's got such a huge switching mode. Giant protection. You got a puzzled look on your face.
I don't see the switching mode.
I've got IBM. 9 out of the world's 10 biggest banks, international banks, have IBM gear in there. And while they may want to go to Amazon, they may, their IT department's dying to go to.
It's literally the physical servers.
The physical stuff.
They lease them.
And their software's written a certain way, and they have this fear of losing control of their data because that's all. Look what happened to Target, and IBM is like, it won't happen with us because we control your hardware, and we've got control of the bottleneck. So IBM's out there pitching their security. Stay with us. We're the guys that really know. We've got the big blue brand and switching mode.
So the cloud is so fascinating because we're still the wild west of the cloud right now, and that's what large companies are worried about is privacy and security of their data going to these startup companies, which are doing everything they can to protect it. But I can see if you have to explain to your board of directors what you're doing with your enormous company's data, which is the lifeblood of that company, you have an easier time of it if you refer to using IBM or another large, well-established company.
There you go.
Sorry, guys. But yeah, it looks like over in 2021 they were real low at 138, and then over the last 2 years they jumped up. 2026 they hit a really high at 305. Now they're coming down again. We'll see. It looks like they're at their market low of, like, they hit like a low in August that they hadn't seen since April of the year before. It's like a low, high, and they're back on a low again. So this might be an opportunity to be buying in them at this moment because there might be a high jump back up, but also maybe just to watch out to see what they're doing. I have to look into them. That may be something I add to my my company checklist. Let's see. I need to write that down so I don't forget. Let's keep listening while I'm doing that.
So really, if you think about IBM, they have a brand mode because you think of them as an enterprise model with security, and they have a switching mode because once you take them in there, good luck ever getting them out, right? Because now they've trained your engineers, they have all that support back there. It's just a nightmare to get them out of there. You'd have to have such compelling reasons. And since security is so important, Jenny Rometty is very smart. She's going to the market and saying, hey, you want security, you want a hybrid, you want a cloud, you got to be with IBM. We're the only ones in the world that can provide that. So, yeah, there goes somebody having not as good a day as we are. Oh my gosh, hope they're all right. All right, shall we go on?
Yeah, number 4.
Number 4 is toll bridge mode. Okay, a toll bridge. Okay, you hear those sirens going by. Those guys have a toll bridge mode. That's the fire department, and they are a government monopoly.
Yeah.
So no reason there couldn't be private fire departments all over the place, right? And they
Right.
charge you for coming to your fire and all that. Well,
Well, Teton County has a volunteer fire department.
there you go.
Yeah.
There's
But these
volunteers.
guys have been appointed by the county government to be the fire
State,
department.
the
And so they have monopoly. And that is a toll bridge. In other words, yes, you can put out your fire other ways. You can
Right.
get a garden hose. You could call in some guy to bomb it with water. I imagine you could find 5 or 6 different ways to put out the fire in your house. But the
Right.
cost of doing it that way is so extremely more than just calling the fire department that you would never consider doing it any other way.
Doing-
So think of it. The reason we call it a toll bridge mode is because, like, if you want to cross a river
You
and
have
there's a
to
bridge, like going from
pay
Marin
toll.
County into San Francisco,
Which
there's a
is the
Golden
only
Gate
one.
Bridge. And you have to pay $5 to go through the bridge.
Yes,
You don't have to pay $5.
Well,
You can
you-
drive around the
unless you're
Richmond Bay
walking.
Bridge.
You've just listed 2 government agencies
Yes.
that we pay for through our taxes, not directly, and which would
Yeah,
actually
there's still
probably prefer for
companies,
us to
there's
use
still
them less.
profit.
Good point. Except there are some out there I'm going to tell you about that are toll bridge modes that are government agencies and they're public companies, both, which are really interesting investments. So the first idea is to get the concept right. You've got this bridge, and it's a lot shorter to come from Marin County, pay the $5 and go into San Francisco, than to drive the Richmond Bay Bridge down Highway 80 across the Oakland Bay Bridge into San Francisco.
Because the Oakland Bay Bridge is free.
And the Richmond Bridge is free.
Okay.
It's just going to cost you $5 of gas and another hour. So no one would do it. No one does it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they didn't used to charge for the Golden Gate Bridge. They started charging to reduce traffic.
And what happened? They could raise that toll. And I imagine they probably have, sat in the little room and said, we could put this at $20, and these people would still have to pay.
I mean, a lot of people would.
Of course they would.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Of
a
course
lot
they would.
faster.
Because why? Because it's a moat, a giant moat that protects that franchise. All right, so Burlington Northern, we mentioned
And they're
before,
not
is a
gonna build
railroad that
another
has a
bridge
kind of
there,
toll bridge
you know?
moat. Now, they're a duopoly. Union Pacific also runs out of Wyoming. But that's it. Those are your 2 choices. So do you think those guys kind of look at what each other's charging and kind of not be too competitive?
I've seen the Golden
Yeah,
Gate Bridge.
I mean, you've got a locked-in margins because there's nobody else that can put in track. All right, so there's an example of a toll bridge. Now, another one is in Georgia. If you want power, you go to Southern. Southern Companies provides the power in Georgia. I can do it other ways. I can put in solar panels. I can put in wind machines. But those are more sort of environmental statements. They're not cheap.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realistically have that option.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a toll bridge. If I want power, the cheapest way to get, I can always drive around and cross with the ferry or get on the river where I don't have any river to cross, but it's just so much cheaper to just do it this way. So those are really, really good moats. If you can find a company that's got one, those are awesome.
Are there any purely private companies that have a toll bridge moat?
Well, Burlington Northern is purely private. Yeah, Warren Buffett bought the whole thing because it's essentially a utility, And then there are
No, he
companies like
didn't.
Southern,
Did he
PG&E in
really? I'm gonna
California,
have to look into that.
Laclede, which owns natural gas companies in Kansas City and St. Louis and Burlington, Birmingham, Alabama. And so these companies are private, but they have a kind of government grant to perform as a monopoly. They're great investments if you can get them cheap.
Berkshire
Obviously,
Hathaway
mostly you
does-
can't.
wow.
They're usually bid up pretty good. So those are toll bridge moats, and when you can get one of those, you buy them because they're awesome. And then the last one is the price moat. The price moat is different than what it sounds like. You'd think like the
2010.
low price guy. That's the guy with the moat.
Interesting.
But that's not true. Any company can price their products really low, right? So we can get into a price war, and what happens is you end up
intriguing.
losing all of your profit margin, and now you're building product and selling it cheaper than it costs you to do it, which is a recipe for disaster.
That's what Amazon did with the Kindle, right?
Exactly.
They acknowledged they're losing money on it.
Yep, and they try to punch it through. Now, here's the thing:
The Kindle,
if you've got
Amazon
a
was losing
company
money on the
that
Kindle?
has not the lowest price, but the lowest cost of whatever it is they're doing, then they can have the lowest price, and the other guys all have to go out of business, and they're still making money. So a really good example of that is a company called CF Industries that has most of the nitrogen fertilizer business in the U.S. They've acquired all the little guys, and they've built this really, really great company that has almost a monopoly. I mean, they're not a toll bridge because you can get it from other people, but they're close. And the reason that they
Now
got
they
it was
have an
because
app.
they have the lowest
free.
cost of production in the whole country. They can provide a farmer nitrogen fertilizer at a lower cost and still make money than anybody in the world. So when prices start coming down for farming
Kindles.
fertilizer, it gets better for them in a weird kind of way,
crazy.
right? They're going to have a
I'm
couple
learning
bumpy
so
years
much
of not
about
quite so much profit,
companies right
but
now.
meanwhile, their competitors are going to go out of business or be bought by CF, and that's what's happened over the last years.
You're
So
looking for a company that has some sort of supply line difference from its competitors.
sure. So like Walmart, for example, has created this amazing machine that keeps driving prices lower and lower and squeezing price like crazy, and that's the
Right.
only reason they exist is to squeeze price so that you can't compete with them out there anywhere
Yep.
in terms of just pure price, right? So what
Which
do?
is
They
true.
squeeze their employees, they squeeze the healthcare system, they squeeze the producers, they make Smithfield
Which is
Foods
why I
put
don't like them,
hogs into
but
containers the size of a
you're
coach seat
low on
and keep them there their
money.
whole life,
Who are you
jack them full of
paying
antibiotics
for?
so they can meet Walmart's demand for
Walmart.
cheap pork. I mean, you can create this nightmare of being the low-cost guys, which I think Walmart has managed to do.
Yeah.
They've arrived at that, we are now being evil.
Yep.
And still incredibly successful.
And more people
Which is-
invest in them. So
which
now
is-
Walmart's going to try to go be evil in China.
Yeah, which is I don't invest in Walmart like stock. I will never invest in Walmart stock. And the moment that I get a chance to stop buying from Walmart, I will. So, and I do like I said, like during the summer when the markets, the the weekend markets, the farmers markets open up. I'm buying from them. I'm going to them. I'm looking for stuff from them instead of from there. I would really love to find a local butcher to get chicken from. I used to have chickens and get eggs from that, but things change. I don't have a house no more. I don't have the same situation, and my life was affected, and so unfortunately, that's how it works.
My biases are rolling out here.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like Walmart's evil, then great, they're going to be fine into your value set, and which takes us back to values. You got to have your values connected to your money. Don't forget that.
Your values.
And
If
it'll be
you
more
like
fun to
Walmart,
invest that
that's
way.
fine. If you like
So that's a
this
price
type
moat.
of choice.
That's what Costco goes for.
I disagree with
Walmart.
that.
Companies that are really low-cost producers and able to get cheap stuff, cheap supply line. So those 5 will cover the vast majority of companies out there that we would be able to successfully invest in. And those are the intrinsic characteristics that Charlie's talking about. They're built. The company's built that way from square one.
Is it really true that they're built that way from square one, or do they pivot at some point? A lot of companies make a pivot. A lot of companies change over time. Look at IBM. You just were talking about them changing from
of course all
the giant
companies
mainframe
change over time.
systems and the business network systems into the cloud now.
Right, but that pivot isn't a change of their moat.
Right.
They're very consciously aware that if they can get into your company deeply, then they can make the next change 20, 30 years from now when
Right.
it's no longer mainframes, it's client server.
Same thing
Oh, it's
with
no
that,
longer client server, it's
outside
distributed
of,
software as a service.
The clouds, like now with AI, right? Google's using AI, Amazon's using, everything's using it, and so whether or not you like AI or not, it's getting incorporated into everything. So
Platform as a service, they can make that change. Those changes
The
don't come along every
change
day.
is happening.
So they know as long as they have a switching mode and a brand mode, that they've got the time to fully assess whether this is the next big thing. Let me give you an example from IBM's history. Tom Watson
Like
Sr.
Microsoft.
built that company as a punch card company. Right? It was tabulated with punch cards. And the UNIVAC computer came out after World War II. And
UNIVAC.
it was offered to Tom Watson to buy the company because they were running out of money. And Watson was like, oh, heck no. That's a piece of crap. Who needs that? Right? But his son recognized that this was going in a new direction that Tom Sr. couldn't even begin to think about properly. IBM had Tom Watson Jr.
so
built an
funny
entire
is that
new
makes
R&D
me-
group.
him talking about UNIVAC right now reminds me of what was the company that Netflix tried to convince to start doing Blockbuster. Blockbuster was like, oh no, these things cost us $100. They did the same thing as Kindle, and they cut the price of how much CDs and cassette tapes cost to a third of the $100, $20, $10, and then started shipping them across to people, super low ball cut them and started shipping them to people's homes so people didn't have to go and pick it up. And then what happened to, instead of Blockbuster and Netflix coming up together, Netflix took over everything, Blockbuster's gone, there's one Blockbuster left in Oregon somewhere. Yeah, that's what happens when you don't move forward when it's time.
Because the old R&D group could not make the paradigm shift. So think about how big the moat was that IBM had in the early 1950s is they had years to make that shift.
Yeah.
Even
And same thing with Blockbuster. They had a long time to make a shift, to adjust, and they just didn't.
while their competition was cranking away and had made the shift earlier. I mean, GE was in that business, and Rand was in it, and just
gotta
big
watch
companies that
those
were in that had
things.
already made the shift literally years before IBM. And it was going same thing that was going on today. Is IBM's over, they're toast, they're way behind the times. But they had such a strong switching mode and such a strong brand that they had time to evaluate it
Which
and
is
change.
so funny he says that they're toast, because they did go low, right? But then, like I said, now in 2026, stocks were selling for $300, and now it's starting to come down. But it's not come down to as low as it was 5-10 years ago.
Which is what's going on now. So these moats, see, the key thing that Charlie's saying is these intrinsic characteristics that, okay, we know that we're going to protect ourselves by being deep into that customer, massively, okay? And that gives us durability. I'll tell you another story. You want to hear another quick story?
Sure.
We got time?
Sure.
Okay, your uncle built a company that had an incredible switching mode. What he did was he built a company that was all about brokering power. As they were deregulating gas and deregulating power off of dams and so on, it became necessary to match up buyers and sellers because price now became an issue. It was no longer regulated. And so Steve built this company that put buyers and sellers together. And what they did to create a switching mode is that they would take, the limited number of buyers and limited number of sellers, right? I mean, you're selling to big electric utilities and places like that. So his guys would take the buyers out to the World Series, the football games. They would go out to all kinds of places, and anything these 28 to 35-year-old buyers wanted to do, that's what these guys took them to do and paid for it and created relationships that allowed them to get an open phone line in to that guy's office that stayed open all day. All they had to do is say, beep, hey, John, this is Bob over at Amerex. I want to talk to you about, got a price here on gas, blah, blah, blah. And they could do deals that nobody else could do. They created a switching mode. It was awesome.
That's
These guys have to
cool.
rip their phones out to compete.
But
with you.
it was
Very cool.
networking. They worked
The
it through
story
networking.
of these companies is very interesting. And it's different from how I think of investing
gotta
normally,
find
which
the
is all
stories.
balance
Yeah.
sheets, financial statements,
It's not
and
just balance
whatever the
sheets,
current
it's-
price is in the stock market.
No, it's not just
This
current price.
is much more interesting to me than that stuff, you know? Like, I love talking to people about their current companies, and hearing the history
Yeah, you have to know
of a
the
company
history of these
is
companies,
equally
how they
interesting.
worked, how they've
That is
changed, how
awesome.
they've moved.
Because we are digging the canyon right now. This is
How
what the
is there-
canyon is.
yeah.
So we're getting our inch wide,
Digging the
mile deep, and we're doing it because it's something we really are
Gotta
kind of
learn.
into, like we're sort of into education or
Gotta
whatever
learn
else.
about being a
We're
self.
into railroad
Learn
trains, I
about
don't know.
being
And so
IB.
you start
Gotta
going in
learn
like
about
this, and pretty
Microsoft,
soon
how
you're
it
going to have some
started.
questions about
The
how do I
truth, not
know
just,
for
like, what we
sure that this
perceive,
has these
not
intrinsic
what the news
characteristics.
tells us.
Absolutely.
What we should talk about next time are some of the numbers that you look at in those accounting statements, which have a bazillion numbers and make everybody want to gag. There's only like 6 or 7 numbers that you
Yeah.
really kind of need to focus on.
It's true.
What is the third one in
They try
Charlie's
to overwhelm you
4
with the numbers, I
The
think.
third one
principles?
They
is
need
management.
those numbers.
Oh,
you
so we're going
don't.
to skip over management?
No, we're going to talk a little bit about some numbers you might have to look at. Do you want to even, or is it going to make you just go gray?
We can talk, no, you have to talk numbers at some point.
Okay, then the next time we're going to pick this up
Okay.
with the numbers that prove that there's a moat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Great.
All right.
Yeah. That is awesome. It doesn't seem like they've left us with any homework, but I'm going to leave you with some, things. Look into, find some companies. Figure out, do what I'm doing right here as they were talking. Check out the information that I heard about. I didn't realize that Berkshire Northern Railroad was bought by Berkshire Hathaway. Actually, it's really interesting because 2010, I remember for the last few years, the man who raised me, he works for them or worked for them, and before that time, 2008, he was laid off, right? And so the company had a big plummet, right, because of what happened in 2008, and he was hired back on in 2009, which means that it was barely a year after that they bought this company, and he continued working for them for many years until, I don't know. It's interesting because I didn't really recognize that, and that might be the reason why he had a job in that company, is because they took over, remanaged, reassessed, and re-dealt with what was happening. I remember all the time him complaining about the way the management was, what the corporation was doing, how they were not paying them appropriately, how they were overworking them. Right before this, I remember, there's engineers and there's conductors, and the way it worked is there'd be 2 of each on each one, so that way they could take shifts, because you'd be on this railroad, train, just, it's connected, but you got to control the lights, the sound, you got to know when you're coming up to crossroads, if one train's coming, it's only one, sometimes they disconnect and you have to sit and wait, and so you got to be listening for those commands and what's happening to know if you're the one going or if you're the one that's needing to wait. And so they had 2 of each, a conductor and whatever the other person I just said. Anyways, and it was so they could switch on and off, so while they were on, traveling across the fucking country for 10 hours, 8 hours consistently, they could take a break, they could take a rest, even if it was for a little bit, to eat some food, to close their eyes. But I remember right before this that one of the big things he was really upset about was that they took it so only one of each would be on there, and they were even thinking about just having one conductor on there, not an engineer at all. And a lot of the engineers were trying to get their conductor's license really fast before that happened, just in case, because they were going to fire a bunch of engineers then, because they wouldn't need them anymore. That didn't happen because it was a safety issue where if someone had fallen asleep, it just caused crashes. So that didn't happen, and I think eventually they decided it was 1 engineer and 2 conductors, or 1 conductor, 2 engineers, or something like that. But they did cut down how many people were on the train at a time, controlling it and making sure it worked and functioned. And I'm pretty sure the way it did work is on the train, the reason why they had 2 of each was because there was a front and a back engine, because sometimes they would need to back it up, and the front engine, pushing back, you're shoving that engine into the others and having to push, whereas if you just switched from using the other engine, you could pull instead of having to shove the main engine back to push everything back. And so they had 2, so that way there'd be 2 on this side and 2 on this side. So I don't know why, the politics and stuff around that, but I know it was a huge issue, and I don't remember him complaining as much after 2009, which would have been right after which would have been right shortly before Berkshire Hathaway bought it right before Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger were in control of it. So that just shows how good of management they are, that adjusted so much. Very interesting. These are the stories you need to learn about these kind of companies. I don't know. I'll look into if you can actually invest in them at all. You can invest in Berkshire Hathaway, which is probably going to be essentially the same thing as investing in this company. So just things to like learn and practice. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. If you're finding this on YouTube, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell icon so that way you know every time I post, which should be every Wednesday to Thursday. And leave a comment down below. What are some companies you're looking into that you're excited of? Learn something new about a company that you're wanting to look into and find. Tell me what's up, guys. I want to know. I'm curious. And I'll see you later.